Volunteering for firearms duty is not for every officer. What was it that made you volunteer?
Well, it's not for every officer, and I think one of the reasons for that is we all sort of look at police officers and, you know, we're all wearing a uniform, so we all get put in the same box. And the reality is that lots of people join the police for lots of different reasons. I was 18, you know, looking for an exciting job, and quite naively, my experience of policing was mainly born from watching detectives run around, you know, with 2-inch guns chasing bad guys. So I was into shooting. I was brought up in Sussex. I was a member of a shooting club. I'd had guns all my life, from air pistols up to shotguns and then pistols and rifles. And so it was almost a natural thing for me to progress. I had about 8 years service before I was trained in the use of a firearm. And I thoroughly enjoyed regular unarmed policing. But once I'd done the firearms course, I was sort of recruited into the instructor's wing, and it sort of snowballed from there, really.
And how does it feel when you realise you've killed somebody?
Me personally, a sort of emptiness, I think. A sort of feeling of sort of guilt, but not feeling guilty, if that makes sense. You know, for me, and for all of us really, I suppose, you know, taking a human life isn't something that you take casually, not unless you're a psychopath. So, and also anger, actually. I remember on my last shooting, I had to sit at the scene for ages, and I watched my colleagues trying to do first aid on the young man that I'd shot, and then eventually an ambulance arrived and said, he's gone, which we knew, but we have to try. And they covered him up with a blanket, and of course it's a crime scene now, so I had to just sit there and look at this red blanket. And the more I looked, the more angry I got. I was angry that this greedy, foolish, headstrong young man had, you know, gone out with guns and balaclavas and handcuffs and all the other things that they had with them to get rich quick by robbing a rival drug dealer. You know, and it occurred to me that he was quite happy to go out and use force and perhaps murder the people he was going to threaten. And he'd forced me in the twilight of my service to have to shoot and kill him.
Should the police be above the law?
No, absolutely not. 100% not. You know, and there's no police officer, and you asked me earlier about training, but there's no police officer who ever, or certainly since the 1960s, when formal firearms training started, it is lesson one, day one of your course, you know, what your rights and what your powers are, and what you can expect if you have to do what you're trained to do. So every police officer understands and accepts fully that there has to be a full and frank investigation into what you've done. It's impossible to be a police officer for too long nowadays without, you know, you having to get in a violent confrontation with people. We actually know the reality of real life conflict, but the people that are judging you, as I said earlier, they don't understand that. And they go, well, you said this, and now you're saying this, or, well, your colleague doesn't say that. Well, you and I could be literally feet apart. We could be shoulder to shoulder, and I would see a need to shoot somebody, but you wouldn't have seen it just because of a foot's difference in angle. You know, and your recollection won't be the same, because when you're in a high threat situation, you know, there's all sorts of chemicals released into the body that mess with your normal daily cognitive way of dealing with things and understanding things. So, and if you've not been in that position and you're judging purely on what you've seen on a body-worn camera in the comfort of a little studio and rewinding it and then playing it forward and then freeze framing it, you may think you understand what went on, and actually in real terms you might have a better understanding of what actually happened than the people that were there. And we ask those police officers to look after us. And so if we train them to use these varying degrees of force, ending up potentially with lethal force, then I think we should be not cutting them some slack, but we should have a better understanding. And you can't just automatically say, well, that police officer shot someone, and then go, well, charge him with murder.